A high-ranking Syrian delegation led by newly appointed Foreign Minister Asaad al-Shaibani has arrived in the Saudi capital, Riyadh. It's the new government's first foreign visit since the fall of the Assad regime last month. The head of Syria's new administration, Ahmed al-Sharaa, has said that Saudi Arabia will have a big role in the country's future. Syrian leaders are looking to shore up regional and international support in order to improve the country's economy and infrastructure after more than 13 years of civil war. Al Jazeera's Resul Serdar has more from the capital, Damascus.
For Syrians, 2025 is the first year without Assad family in more than half a century, and they are trying to adapt into this new reality. There is a celebratory mood in Damascus. Syrians are optimistic that 2025 is going to be the year that they are going to rebuild their country. However, they are well aware of the tremendous challenges ahead as well, because they know that the last 13 years of the civil war have devastated much of the country, crippled the economy, and scattered the nation. But moreover, they know that they need a national reconciliation as well. And for that, the new administration is planning to have a national dialogue conference being held in Damascus. Because the last 13 years was a kind of a growing rift between the state and the nation, between the people and the state. So that's why they know that they desperately need this kind of reconciliation. They need to build a bridge between the nation and the state. But this reconciliation is not only domestically, internationally as well. The new administration is sending out the message saying that Syria is back. Syria is not a threat for the regional countries, for the neighboring countries, and for the international community. Indeed, they're saying that now it is time to put an end to Syria's isolation. The country is ready to reconnect with the region and with the international community. And for that, they are calling on the international community to remove the sanctions that have been imposed on Syria. And they see this as a very, very important step, because without removing these sanctions, they know that it's going to be impossible for Syria and Syrians really to get back to the normalcy. Resul Serdar, Al Jazeera, Damascus.
So let's bring in Adam Clements. He's a former diplomat and also served as a Pentagon official. He joins us live from Washington, D.C. Adam, good to have you with us. So look, I mean, this is the Syrian Foreign Minister's first official trip abroad. How does this visit then set things up diplomatically with Riyadh? And what do the Saudis want from the new Syrian administration then?
Thank you. I think this is very significant. I think the fact that Hayat, Tahrir, Sham, and other rebel groups had stronger links to Ankara and to Turkey, and now the fact that the transition of the three top ministers in this new government went to Riyadh, I think is very important. And I think that Riyadh, absolutely, from a diplomatic standpoint, it wants to reestablish ties, to begin forging stronger ties, to try to sideline the many decades that Iran had to use Syria to link with its allies in Hezbollah.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point you make, Adam, because presumably Saudi Arabia will see this as an opportunity to keep Iran's influence weakened in Syria, especially with Iran's regional proxies like Hezbollah, Hamas severely damaged by Israel.
Absolutely, and I think that Saudi Arabia would have a big role as well in trying, as you said at the outset, of construction, of reconstruction. Syria is very dependent on Iran for oil and fuel, and so I think Gulf states could also support that as well. It would also be interesting to see as far as the diplomatic dynamics that would take place between Ankara, between Riyadh, and between Abu Dhabi. The Emiratis have also would be keen for interface, and of course Qatar. Qatar had been closer to Turkey, and a little bit is going back, if you could think of the spat between the Saudis, between the Emiratis in the past, and all these dynamics would certainly play out.
Adam, I mean, you're there in Washington, D.C. How is the U.S. viewing events in Syria? I mean, can we expect the new Trump administration to partner up, say, with Arab countries like Saudi Arabia and Qatar to help rebuild Syria?
Well, as many have observed, that President-elect Trump said that the Syria conflict, what's happening in Syria, the revolution, is not for the U.S. to become involved. I think it's be very difficult for the new administration to not become involved. I think that the U.S. forces in the east of the country very much have a role in what is going on to keep ISIS and the remnants of ISIS from reemerging. And I think Gulf states, the Saudis, the Emiratis, Turkey as well, Jordan, Iraq would have a very large partnership, or at least look to the U.S. for a lot of leadership diplomatically and militarily.
Adam, just a final thought to you. With the fall of the Assad regime in Syria, how do you see then the trajectory of the Middle East now being reshaped, given that Iran and its militias, as you say, have been severely weakened? Where does this leave other key players, perhaps like Russia and Moscow's influence in Syria?
Well, absolutely. Russia, its influence has been greatly diminished in its area that it had to bring in its resources in the Eastern Mediterranean, having to move those perhaps to Libya. But I think steps number 1, 2, and 3 of the incoming Trump administration will be to stop the conflict in Gaza, because that has had second and third order effects, not only from a security standpoint, but also economically. And all these issues that we just mentioned, Gulf states, will have a huge influence. And this is why what we're seeing right now will be very interesting to see the developments of what comes out of these meetings between the Syrian transitional government and Saudi leadership, and perhaps other meetings between Gulf states in the future.
Adam Clements, good to get your insight. Many thanks for talking to us.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.